Hello, Tiziana.
Hello, hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Okay, so let's start.
Let's start. Okay, so shall I share the screen or shall I wait a little bit more?
Yes, you may share screen or introduce yourself as you wish.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I'll start the presentation. Okay, hope you can see the screen.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure. I listened to many fantastic talks and I'm looking forward to the next ones as well. Today, I'm here to tell you a story called Morpheus. And if you now are thinking about the Matrix, sorry to disappoint you because the Morpheus of my story comes from a different word. It's the god of dream and sleep. It was October 2021 when I started not sleeping well anymore. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I just had moved to a new flat in London and I'll just have to get used to the new house, I thought. At 4 in the morning of yet another sleepless night, I decided to figure out the cause of my insomnia. What was it? Was maybe some stress and anxiety for the next looming deadline, or maybe there was a sudden noise coming from outside. So I decided to approach to this problem as I do with any of my design problems, doing some research. So I decided to monitor my sleep using an app that records sleep movements and ambient noises. After several weeks of recording, I took a first look at the data and I realized that there was a pattern in ambient noise around the early hours in the morning, precisely when I woke up almost every night. And from the data, it emerged that towards the early hours of the day, the bus began to circulate in the street just below my bedroom window. And while the noise, of course, wasn't loud enough to wake a person up, it was certainly enough to disturb my sleep. From this observation, Morpheus was born, a work that uses the data contained in the sound to create this pattern on paper. Each line and curve represent the amplitude of sound waves over time, and the broken circle represents the interrupted sleep. The dark color of the background and the glow of the rays recalls those of an eclipse to signify the darkness of the night or simply the desire for a deep sleep. As you can see, the cluster on the right-hand side shows a peak in volume, and that's when the noise from the buses come from. So my name is Tiziana Alocci. I am an information designer and data artist based in London. I'm originally from Italy. I grew up in a city called Genoa in the northwest of Italy. Then I studied communication design and data visualization, information design at Polytechnic of Milan, always in Italy. And soon after my graduation, I moved to London. I started visualizing data in 2010, working as information designer for international creative studios and agencies. And in 2018, I launched my own studio. And since then, I've supported more than 50 organizations in generating growth by turning data into meaningful stories. Beside my work as information designer, for the past 5 years, I've been an associate lecturer at the University of Arts London, where I teach data visualization. And I'm also extremely lucky to travel the world, giving lectures to prominent universities and academic institutions around the world. Well, by now you should already know that I'm clearly obsessed with data. I started to collect data when I was 4 years old, but more than anything, I'm really obsessed by the meaning of numbers. To give some context, this is during the first wave of the pandemic was early 2020 in Italy. There was this news about a lot of people losing their jobs. Around 444,000 people lost their job, but 312,000 of them were women. And we were in a moment where we were flooded and bombed with information, with numbers, with statistics. So it was very difficult to grasp the magnitude of this number. So I did what I always do when I design data visualization. I put a number in context. So I want to show how 312,000 people look like. And I did so comparing this number to the capacity of a series of venues. For example, is enough people to fill the San Siro stadiums 4 times. And if you're not a football fan, the San Siro stadiums is the largest stadium in Italy. But it's also enough people to fill 35 times the world's largest passenger cruise ship. So when we talk about numbers, especially when these numbers are linked to people, it's always important to put them in context, because numbers alone are not enough. Also, if you excuse me, a moment of shameless self-promotion, this post went viral on my Instagram account. If you want to see more of them, don't be shy and make sure to give me a follow there. So I use data to tell stories on multiple platforms, from interactive tools, websites, printed visualization, and even art exhibitions. I collaborate with a British magazine called Award UK, part of the Condé Nast Group, where I visualize static printed visualization, complex, full of details. This is, for example, a story about all the SpaceX rocket launches and their reuse and recycle of their rockets. But I can also tell stories about the video game land coverage. I don't know if there are any gamers here in the crowd, but you can cover a lot of land playing different video games. Sometimes the visualization are much more abstract in a sense, without labels, without text or even numbers. And sometimes are full of content, full of elements. Sometimes they borrow graphic elements from cartography, which is one of the earliest form of data visualizations, and sometimes have labels, symbols, text, and all the kind of information. This is a work that I've done for an Italian newspaper called Corriere della Sera, and it is a visualization, a double spread about the EGOT winners, which are those people that, artists that won an Emmy Awards, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Awards. And by 2019, by the time that I've done this visualization, there were only 15, and today there are 18. And recently, Viola Davis achieved EGOT, winning a Grammy a few days ago. So congratulations. So sometimes this visualization ended up in art exhibitions, in museums, in library. And it was the case of an exhibition that I was part of for the British Library in London, which was meant to open in 2019, then was the pandemic, and then it was opened last year from April to August. My works were exhibited there. And this is interesting, it's an interesting case study, because beside all the work that I do as a data visualization designer, for my personal research and my personal project, I tend to focus a lot on non-numerical data. And this is an image, a sketch of tattoos on the body. And tattooing is an old practice, which increased particularly in Britain and Australia in the 19th century, when many criminals, convicts got tattoos. The tattoos, numerous meanings include words of love, hope, pain, friendship, but more than anything, as a voluntary procedure, tattooing provide helpful information of non-elite voices that are otherwise difficult to locate in historical data sets. When the British Library approached me to create 2 artworks for an exhibition called Visualized Military News, because they were digitalizing all the newspaper of their archives and they had a lot of data to visualize. One of the data set was about crime and one was about tattoos. And I made this visualization creating a link between crime and tattoo. And the visualization split in 2 sides. One side has data about crime and one about tattoos. So it contains the most extensive information about tattooing in the 19th century in Britain and Australia. The data come from the Digital Panopticon, which is a database that contains more than 60,000 convicts who describe tattoos in this database. And the language explained the status is mixed, sometimes using short and vague sentences. And how the data is collected and depicted is like, you can see here in the slide, so small sketches on a piece of paper. So to give a context, I also visualized the mention of the word tattoo from a selection of British newspapers in this radial chart where every line showed the total mention per year. And we can see that at the beginning of the century, almost no one was talking about tattoos, and then there's been a dramatic increase, specifically around 1871 and 1873, when the extensive reporting of the Thickbour claimant case, in which evidence from tattoos played an important role, caused a peak in the dataset. And the tattooing in the 19th century was viewed as evidence of brutality and crime. So I visualized on the other side data about crime in Victorian era. Specifically the impact of punishment on the lives of 100,000 people sentenced by the Old Bailey, and other information like the type of weapon used to commit specific crime and the breakdown by gender. So most data for this artwork came from images, and in the same way from images came the inspiration from the layout. Here my goal was to merge together two different words, so I went back doing some visual research to try to find a way to see how in the past two different words were depicted. And I found a lot of inspiration in celestial maps of the sky, and especially the vintage one. And there are so many available online. And I finally settled on one, which is called the Map of Two Hemispheres of the Heavens, made by John Seller in 1675. And you can see how the two circles resemble the shape of the layout that I use for the visualization. Another work that I've done for the same exhibition, using as data words. And here the topic was about visualizing the word used to cover the Crimean War in the 19th century. And I use a data set made of the top 50 most frequent words for every year of the war. And I mapped them on these three loops that should resemble the gears of a mechanical watch, to reinforce the concept of time, which during a war is very important. So working with data that are not numerical, basically qualitative data, prompted me to a couple of questions. So if we can visualize words, if we can visualize images, can we actually even visualize sounds and music? What has been done so far? So I started doing some research. And in 1912, the British art critic Roger Fry coined the term visual music to describe the work of the painter Vasily Kandinsky, which wasn't only a talented painter, but he also was a talented musician. For him, the emotional power of music provided inspiration for abstract paintings that use lines, shapes, and color to produce a visual link between music and visual representation. But more recently, over 40 years, the music pioneer and producer Brian Eno explored the complex relationship between light and sound. And he pursued a career in the visual arts that have developed together with his work as a musician. And even more recently, there is this new area in data visualization called data sonification, which means the use of non-speech audio to convey information. Data sonification is a powerful tool to make data more accessible by transforming, basically by sonifying data, numerical data, transforming numerical data into sound. And in this way, we break barriers to accessibility and starting to use other senses other than sight to experience data. This opens up many opportunities to make digital products and information accessible to people with visual impairment, for example. But now I want to show you a quick experiment. So if you have your volume turned up, I'm gonna play a sound. So the sound is not glamorous at all, but what you just heard is a data set showing the sea level rise in the past 10 years, with data coming from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So if it's possible to sonify numbers, is it possible to visualize sound? That was the question that I asked myself. And the opportunity arose when in 2019 I was approached by record label, and they asked me to produce some artworks for the cover of their album, but they didn't have any data to give me, but they had the music. So it started a series of experiments, a series of work, a big collection of data-driven album covers, which I made from 2019. And but how did I do that? Well, I work a lot with inspiration and visual metaphors, because sometimes shapes as simple as nature, this is a jellyfish and the mouth of a volcano, with some data and some creative input, they can transform themselves into real data visualizations. And I'm going to play a video with a quick showreel to show the extensive variety of the works that I've done. So from 2019, I designed over 20 different album covers. All of them use the recurring shape of a circle, which is a tribute of Kandinsky, which used extensively the shape of the circle. And they change color, they change color treatment and look and feel to adapt to the different emotions arising from the individual song. And they have been used in all the platforms, all different mediums, from the most popular platform of music streaming until actual wine bottles that we made for a specific anniversary, until record cover of actual vinyl record, until tape cassette, which apparently it's very popular right now. So I would like to close my my talk with this invite to focus also on the data that is non-numerical, because data is all around us, like the accompanying sounds of our life. And visualizing this type of data, qualitative data, you can learn more about yourself, find new ways to make art, and breaking barriers to make information and knowledge more accessible to people. That's all I have. Thank you so much. This is my way to close the talk, saying that transforming data into meaningful story is my goal. And my DMs are open. If you want to contact me, you're more than welcome to send me an email and get in touch. And I'm looking forward to all your questions. Thanks so much.
So, okay. Guys, here I see these questions. Which tools are you using to create such powerful visuals?
So I'm asked this question many times, and actually I forgot to say that I'm not a coder, so I do everything manually. So I use Adobe Illustrator to create the visualization, and of course I use a series of audio manipulation softwares to play with the sound before to transform into a visual. But it's made with Illustrator and Photoshop, all the visual effects.
Okay, and also I read a comment about circles, and really my first impression is that circles are almost everywhere. Is it something your personal, or really the best way to represent this information?
So in my work, circles are everywhere, and it's a little bit of my distinctive sign now. I use circles for pretty much every visualization that I do, and I've done that for a long time now. And specifically in the context of these album covers, I use the circle as a tribute to Kandinsky, and Kandinsky used a lot the shape of circles in his work. But yes, circle is a very powerful shape for data visualization, and I love it a lot.